The exclusionary rule. The exclusionary rule means that illegally obtained evidence must be excluded. Meaning is the court cannot use illegally obtained evidence to get a defendant convicted of a crime. The rationale behind this exclusionary rule is to deter police from violating citizens' constitutional rights. Meaning is if police understand if they engage in conducting illegal searches and seizures, the evidence they obtained would not be able to be used in court. The police would be deterred from conducting illegal searches and seizures. So that is the rationale behind this rule. It is very important we understand this case, Mapp versus Ohio. Mapp versus Ohio is a very important U.S. Supreme Court decision above this exclusionary rule. But it is important for us to understand Mapp versus Ohio is not the first case in which the U.S. Supreme Court created the exclusionary rule. Actually, this rule was created much earlier. This rule was first created in a case decided by the U.S. Supreme Court in 1914. That was a lot earlier than Mapp versus Ohio. But why this Mapp versus Ohio is important, the significance of this Mapp versus Ohio is this. In this case, the court extended the application of the exclusionary rule to all the jurisdictions in the United States. Before, this exclusionary rule was only a federal evidence rule, meaning is if in a federal jurisdiction, if a federal police conducted illegal search and then the evidence obtained could not be used as evidence against the defendant. But the rule had no application to the states. So before Mapp versus Ohio, it was up to the states to determine whether they want to adopt the exclusionary rule or not. So some states adopted this rule and some other states didn't. In Mapp versus Ohio, police conducted an illegal search of Miss Mapp's house, but the evidence obtained was used to get the defendant convicted because back then the state of Ohio did not have the exclusionary rule. But after this Mapp versus Ohio, the U.S. Supreme Court said this exclusionary rule must be applied throughout the country in all the jurisdictions. So that means in the federal jurisdiction and also in all the states. If a police obtained evidence illegally, the evidence could not be used in court. So this case is important because we know the vast majority of police officers are local or state police officers. We only have a very limited number of federal law enforcement officers. So if this exclusionary rule, if this rule's application was only limited to the federal jurisdictions, and then we know the rule would not have a much effect. But after this Mapp versus Ohio, the rule's application was extended to all the jurisdictions in the country. So this rule, after this Mapp decision, gained a lot more significance. So that is why this Mapp versus Ohio is an important court decision. We also need to understand it. After this Mapp decision, we know this exclusionary rule now is applicable to all the jurisdictions in the United States. But it is we also have this concern, or the U.S. Supreme Court, some justices also believe there's a concern. We must maintain a balance between the interests of law enforcement and protection of defendants and suspects' constitutional right. So the court after Mapp versus Ohio did create several exceptions to the exclusionary rule. We are going to discuss one of these exceptions created by the court. The court created this exception in this case, that is Nix versus Williams. In this case, the defendant was convicted of a murder for murdering a 10-year-old girl. After this murder was committed, and then this police was investigating the case, and then the police actually organized these search teams to try to find this little girl, or maybe find this little girl's body. And then the defendant surrendered himself to the police. But it was not in the city where this crime occurred. He surrendered to the police in a different city. So after he was arrested, and the police read him his Miranda rights, and then the police were transporting him from one city to another, to the city where the crime actually occurred. And because the police read the defendant his Miranda rights already, and the defendant also contacted his lawyer, and then his lawyer notified the police, saying that the police should not question the defendant on the way while the police were transporting him from one city to another. However, on the way of this transportation, one of the police officers in the car made a Christian burial speech to the defendant. The officer basically said to the defendant, "You took the little girl away from her parents just before Christmas. Now you should at least have the decency to help the parents find the little girl's body so that her parents could give her a Christian burial." And then after this conversation in the car, and then the defendant somehow was moved by this conversation. So the defendant actually led the police to the location of the body. The defendant said, "Oh, I would like to show you where I dumped the body." And then the defendant actually led the police to the location, and then the police actually found the body. So it is very important for us to understand this. Legally speaking, this police officer's Christian burial speech violated the defendant's constitutional right. The reason is, according to the law, after the defendant expresses or suspect expresses his wish to exercise his right to counsel or his right to remain silent, the police must stop all questioning. The police cannot continue to interrogate or question the suspect. So, but in this case, apparently the defendant already indicated he would like to exercise his Miranda rights, and also the lawyer also contact the police saying that they should not interrogate the defendant. But on the way, the police still questioned the defendant. Of course, the police actually said, "You don't have to answer my question. I just want to give you something to think about." But nonetheless, that is still a form of interrogation. So this police action, this police officer's Christian burial speech was in violation of this defendant's constitutional rights. But the issue now is, now we had this police violation, but the issue is whether the defendant's statement to the police and also the little girl's body should be excluded from evidence according to this exclusionary rule. The defendant argued that the police violated his constitutional right, so this evidence should be excluded. And but of course, if the defendant was on trial for murder, and if there was no if the prosecution could not admit the little girl's body, that would create tremendous difficulty for the prosecution to prove the case. So the prosecution just argued this evidence should not be excluded. The trial court did not exclude the evidence, so the defendant was convicted. So the defendant appealed the case to the U.S. Supreme Court, and then it is important for us to look at how the court actually ruled in the case. The ruling of the court, the ruling of the U.S. Supreme Court was this. The court said the defendant's statement to the police should be excluded, because we understand this police officer's Christian burial speech was indeed in violation of the defendant's constitutional right. So because of this violation, the exclusionary rule should apply. So the court said this the defendant's statement to the police, saying that he would be waiting to show the police where he dumped the body, this statement must be excluded. But the court at the same time also ruled the little girl's body did not need to be excluded, meaning as there was no need to exclude the little girl's body. The little girl's body could be used as evidence. Why the court ruled this way? Because the court in the case created an exception. The exception is called the inevitable discovery exception. Meaning as the court said, in this case, when the defendant led the police to the location of the body, one of the search teams organized by the police was already very close to the location of the body. So the court said, even though there had been no police violation, even though the defendant had not led the police to the location of the body, one of the police search teams would have found the body anyway. So that is an inevitable discovery. So based on this, what happened in the case, based on this, one of the search teams was already very close to the body. The court in this case created one of the exceptions to the application of the exclusionary rule. That is called inevitable discovery exception. Meaning is, even though there was a police violation, but if a police could prove even without this violation, police would have been able to find this evidence anyway, and then there was no need to apply this exclusionary rule to exclude the evidence.